Hey everybody, it's Miss C. So today we are working on some clay skills, specifically kind of like sketching out and practicing using some modeling clay, the clay totem project from our clay playlist. All right, so what we're gonna start with is actually sketching out our project. And we have some tips to make this a little bit easier for practicing, especially if you haven't ever played with 3D stuff before, anything that squishes in your hands. And needed it to actually look like something instead of a blob. So first things first, the suggestion is whenever you're actually building this, you're gonna aim for something maybe about the size of your thumb. Not too huge. Basically what we're gonna be practicing whenever you're getting this in actual clay is slipping and scoring, getting things to stick together. And what you're practicing right now is a couple of building techniques where you both carve in and stick on bits of clay to itself. So first off, we gotta have an idea of what we're gonna make. So as I said, we're gonna kind of start with something about the size of our thumb. Now I'm gonna draw it a little bit larger than I actually am gonna make it, but let's start with something that's kind of sausage shaped. Let's go sausagey. And if you want, you can do it this way and make it like a wiener dog or something, but I'm gonna do this way because I think totems should look like totem poles. All right, first things first, I want something that's gonna stick on. Now that's gonna easily be some little legs or some little arms. I would suggest one or the other. Don't worry about having it be both. So if I want little legs, I'm gonna maybe do some little cat legs that stick on the side that have like the rounded top and then they like stick out like a little worm. And I want my two little cat legs to kind of look the same on either side. So I might do little cat legs. Other little leg shapes that you might have or little arm shapes that you might have that are a little bit simpler are gonna be just like, you know, half moons, maybe a little paws if you want to go crazy. Do something. Maybe you want to do actual shoes and feet and you can stick them on the bottom. That's fine, but they're going to be attached to the sides. Let's see. I need something that's going to carve in. I'm going to carve in kind of like some eye sockets for me to put some eyes in, and I'm going to maybe do some kind of like angry eyebrow situation up here. We'll figure it out. And I also want probably a little nose, some kind of little nose. Every other detail on this guy, after figuring out how to carve in some space and to stick things on, can be drawn on with some kind of, or carved in with some kind of tool. So let's say that this little cat banana man has some kind of striped shirt on, sure. And just because I can, I'm gonna make him an actual banana man and he can have a stem, banana stem. Look at that, banana man. So that's gonna be something that we're aiming for, just like cat banana. So I'm gonna take my clay, and the first thing I gotta do for any kind of clay project, especially anything figural like this, is I need to make my main body. That's the exact first shape that I made, my little sausage shape. And as I said, I'm aiming for something about the size of my thumb, which means I actually need to grab a little bit more of this clay. If you're also working with modeling clay, don't be afraid if the modeling clay is a bit stiff. A lot of modeling clay gets kind of static over time. Someone hasn't used it in a while, and it can get very tough. And when it does, all you gotta do is just work it with your hands for a little bit, and the warmth of your hands and just the pressure of moving it around will help make it a little bit softer and easier to deal with. All right, so for a long skinny shape like this, you saw that I was rolling a lot in my hands. I do try and roll a little bit further than you might initially want to roll. It's very tempting to just kind of roll right here in the center of your palms, but that usually ends up with something a little bit not circular. So you can see I'm going just a little bit further than that. And if it were much, much longer and I needed something really long, I'd be rolling it out on the table. But this is about the size of my thumb, therefore I'm in a good spot. Everywhere that you have little creases, you want to use your finger to rub over those, to blend them out and to blend them down. You don't need a lot of pressure. It's kind of like spreading butter on a piece of toast. You just kind of like grab like a little bit at the top and you just drag. And you're just dragging the surface. You're not trying to dig deep or make a little hole or anything, at least not yet. So there we go. I've shaped one object. It's the piece in the middle. The next thing that I can do is any of the features. I think adding the legs on is gonna be really easy, so I'm actually gonna start up here. And I'm gonna start probably with my eyes. They're the most complex thing. And as I said, you have two methods of doing sculpting on 3D stuff. You are subtracting material and you are adding material. And when I say subtracting material, that means anytime you're pushing in or carving off some of your surface and your material. In my case, I wanted to carve in some eye sockets. So I'm going to actually use the back end of a Sharpie to get this going. I'm going to give myself some eye sockets to work in. And that's where I'm going to be building out his little nose and where I'm going to be, you know, sticking his eyeballs later. Now I do want to soften these up a little bit because they are a little bit extreme, but that's fine. And I'm also going to bring these up a little bit so that the brow ridges are up a little higher. So right now, it looks like a nose.
It's a little owl. Well, yeah, like the whole thing.
I mean, bird banana, kind of cat bird banana, sure. So I have, this is subtractive building where you push in or you carve out, because I could also take some kind of like scooping tool and scoop some of this out in order to make that happen. Additive is more like what I'm going to do for his eyeballs. So I'm going to take a little bit of clay and I'm going to roll it. And the easiest way to make two things that are even is to start with something that's a little bit bigger than you need, which this is way bigger than I need, and chop it in two. So I'm gonna very carefully split this into two fairly equal pieces and get these rolling. And again, I'm rolling in my palms, this time in a circular motion in order to make little round balls. And those are going to be added into my eye sockets. To make my eyes. Now this is additive. You're adding in material. I carved in to make my little like brow ridges. I'm adding on to make my little eyeballs. I could probably make them smaller, but I'm not gonna worry about it right now. A good way to kind of think about it is anything that needs to go in, you want to carve out. Anything that needs to pop out, you want to stick on. And most things that are in complex shapes are going to be a combination of the two, like my eyes right there. Now, complex shape. If you remember, a complex shape is one that is not a basic form. This one is mostly still a cylinder. By the time I add on his little nubbins, his eyebrows, his like feet, all of that, they will be much more complex shaped. But for now, he is very simplistically shaped. And that's fine, as long as I don't end there. I do want him to have complexity to him. The more complex the shapes are, the more interesting your little figure is going to look. So you can see I've got this nose that sticks out right here. I would probably need a smaller tool to really be able to blend that in nicely, but I could have also probably added that on before I stuck on his little eyes, but I didn't think of that, so it's fine. He's a practice guy anyway, so I can mess up on him all I want. Doesn't really matter. Let's see, I'm gonna stick on his little antenna top. So complex shapes are important because they are going to add interest. They look more interesting. They aren't boring, so to speak. It is very easy to try and do something that you consider easy to do and not realize how boring it looks. It is extremely dull to have something that is just a sausage with a face carved in. That's why we want parts coming out, sticking out, and giving this guy some movement. So even though it's not in my sketch, I think I do need a little bit more subtractive. So I'm gonna use just the tip of this to give him some funky shaped pupils. Look at that, now he looks scared. Let's give him some angry eyebrows. I'll be back in a second. Right, so forgive this dirty tool, but I do wanna point out that using tools to do finer grade things than your fingers can do is generally a good plan. I can't really like carve a really straight line just using my fingernails. They're a little bit too curved for that. So what I'm gonna do instead is I'm gonna use a tool to chop some of my pieces up. And that will help me get a much straighter line than if I was just trying to do this with my fingers. Now that I have something here, I can just kind of like squish it around a little bit to cut any of those bits off. And I can get a much neater rectangular shape than I would on my own. So you can makeshift a lot of tools. The edge of an ID would work really well for a straight edge for something like this, or a chopper tool, like one of these, just chop, 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 chop. If you have more specific tools that are better for that are more specific, those work as well, but you want to make sure that yours are clean. This one's super dirty. I just grabbed it because this is a practice guy anyway. So I'm going to stick on his angry eyebrows. We're going to have a grumpy banana man. Grumpy banana. All right. And now I'm going to get to my last couple of details. I'm going to go ahead and make his legs and stick them on and give you a little tour of him in a minute. All right, so he's almost done here. You can see where I've carved in a little bit. You can see where I've added pieces on really easily. My last tip for you is drawing lines. Like sometimes there's going to be things that aren't going to be added on or carved out, like these little lines for his weird little shirt. In which case, the temptation is to do something like this. You have your surface, you have your little scoring tool, and you just drag along like that. It kind of works. It works better in modeling clay than it does regular clay. Regular clay, you get this weird kind of like eraser dust looking stuff. So my tip to you is this: don't try and carve that stuff in. Lightly dent it where you want it to go. And then once you have a line that you like, press that in. I'm gonna use just the edge of my tool and I'm gonna press it in like so. You can see like that. I can do one this way and then come in from this other side to do it that way. Pressing in these sorts of details is going to end up with a much cleaner line, and it won't end up with all those like weird eraser scragglies that trying to draw it on will make it prone to have. All right, so here is finished banana angry cat man. He's adorable. He looks super odd. So here's what you want to design for yourself. First off, he is a complex shape, but he's not a very open shape. I want you to notice that he is very compact. Nothing sticks out very much. That will make it easier for you to kind of make sure nothing falls off as you're practicing with clay. You do want features. You want at least a couple things stuck on, and you want a couple places where you're carving in. So you want to do both subtractive and additive sculpting. So parts where you scoop out and parts where you stick on. And if he has some kind of face, give him some kind of expression. Don't do nothing. When you're done with the sketching your little guy, we will have some modeling clay for you to use. And you will want to, after you make him, give him a good photo shoot. You want to get a good several angles, like get his good side, maybe his top. Like, does he have a glorious booty? I don't know. You decide. But you want to give yourself lots of reference photos, because this is modeling clay. It never really dries. This stuff has been out of its box for 3 years now, which means that it will not stay. This is not your final. This is a practice, and you want to treat this like a sketch. You want it to basically be your practice run for shaping a bunch of different things. All right, so that is everything you need to know about our little like totem guy in practicing. Again, make sure he's dense and doesn't stick out too much, about the size of your thumb, and you're good to go.